imagine a car that runs on water or one that runs on the power of the sun? Well, the truth is you might have to get used to such wacky ideas. The planet is rapidly running out different types of sources of energy that are becoming our future. And in order to operate them, let us learn more about sources of energy. So, what do you mean by sources of energy? Let's study deeply the term sources of energy. Sources of energy can be divided into two types. They are renewable sources of energy and non-renewable sources of energy. So, the source of energy is divided into two types. First one is renewable sources of energy and second one is non-renewable sources of energy. Let's study each of them in detail. Sources of energy that will get depleted someday are called non-renewable sources of energy. So, there are certain examples of non-renewable sources of energy: fossil fuels and petroleums. These are the various examples of non-renewable sources of energy. Come to the second classification, that is renewable sources of energy. Renewable sources of energy will never exhaust, or it can be regenerated or used again and again. There are certain examples of renewable sources of energy. They are wind energy and solar energy. Next is conventional sources of energy. Conventional sources of energies are those energies which are being used for a long period of time. They are generally non-renewables. Now let's study the source of energy one by one in detail. Fuels are those sources of energies which give heat energy on burning, such as coal, petroleum and wood. A good fuel should possess certain properties, right? A good fuel should give more heat. It should release less smoke. It should be cheap and it should be easily available and safe. And also it should be easy to store. Less ash should be left and it should have proper burning temperature. Fossil fuels are formed from the remainings of dead plants and animals under the earth's crust due to excessive pressure and temperature for millions of years. There are certain examples for fossil fuels. The examples are coal, petroleum, diesel, kerosene, LPG, natural gases, etc. These are the various examples of fossil fuels. It is the most commonly and widely used sources of energy. We can say that fossil fuel is a key factor for industrialization. But as it is non-renewable source of energy, it must be used carefully. There are certain disadvantages of fossil fuel also. It causes air pollution by releasing poisonous gases like oxides of carbon, nitrogen and sulfur while burning. And when these gases are released in the air, they causes acid rain. When the acid rain falls to the earth, it undergoes various physical and chemical changes and causes soil and water pollution. Fossil fuels releases a lot of smoke. Fossil fuels are used in cooking, which is LPG and coal, in vehicles, that is petroleum and diesel. Fossil fuels are used to produce electricity in thermal power plants. Now, what is meant by thermal power plant? Let's study. A thermal power plant is a plant in which electricity is produced from fossil fuels, mainly coal. Let us study the working of thermal power plant. Okay. First, the coal is burnt into the furnace of steam boiler. High pressure steam is produced in the boiler. In turbine, this steam forces rotates the turbine blades. As the turbine turns, it causes the generator to do its work and create electricity. The transmission of electricity is more efficient than transporting coal or petroleum over the same distance. Therefore, many thermal power plants are set up near coal or oil fields. So now let's move on to the next topic of this chapter, that is hydropower. Hydropower is the electricity generated using the energy of falling and running water. It is a conventional source of energy, but it has been enhanced by using of modern technologies. Okay friends, now let's study the working of hydropower plant. Are you ready to study this? Okay, let's start. A dam or a reservoir is made over a river to collect water in large amount. Water coming off high speed rotates the turbine, which in turn activates a generator to produce electricity. Some hydroelectric power plants just use a small canal to channel the river water through a turbine. There are some disadvantages of hydropower plants. They are, it can be established only in some certain locations. It depends on locations of river and oceans. Also, large area is required to build a dam and it resulted in rehabilitation of people. The vegetation submerged below dam produces methane, which leads to greenhouse effect. Biomass. Biomass is another source of energy that is directly obtained from plants and animals such as wood, agricultural waste, gobar, which is the cow dung. It produces less energy and releases lot of smoke. Let us compare wood and charcoal. When wood is burnt in limited oxygen, it loses water and other volatile substances, leaving charcoal behind. The benefit of charcoal over wood are that it produces more energy and releases less smoke and no flame. Okay friends, now let's move on to the next topic of this lesson, that is gobar and agricultural waste. Gobar and agricultural waste is used to produce biogas or gobar gas. Biogas plant is generally made of bricks. The various forms of biomass are mixed with an equal quantity of water in the mixing tank, and this forms the slurry. The slurry is fed into the digester through the inlet chamber. Anaerobic microorganisms decomposes slurry to form 75% of methane, carbon dioxide, hydrogen and H2O gases. And the gases are stored in the chamber and these gases are called biogas. The advantages of biogas are no ash unlike wood and charcoal, no smoke, large supply of heat, and waste left in biogas plant is a good fertilizer because it has nitrogen and phosphorus in excess. Biogas is a good way to dispose sewage. Sewage can be used with gobar and agricultural waste to produce biogas in biogas plant. It is a renewable source of energy. Biogas is used for cooking purposes, for street lighting and for generation of electricity. Okay, this was all about the biogas. Now let's move on to the next topic of this chapter, that is wind energy. We have been harnessing the wind energy for hundreds of years. So when the rotor runs, it spins a generator to make electricity. The electrical energy from the generator is transmitted along cables to a substation. Individual wind turbines can be used to generate electricity on a small scale. To generate electricity on much larger scale, a large number of wind turbines grouped together, sometimes known as a wind farms. The advantages include no pollution, renewable and no maintenance cost. And there is also some disadvantages for wind energy. The disadvantages are wind farms can only be established at those places where the wind speed is greater than 15 km per hour. Wind turbine cannot work if there is no wind and wind speed is not so high. So, we need to store a power backup. It requires large area around 2 hectares of land. Requires high setup cost. Towers and especially bladers are exposed to rough weather. So, the blade gets damaged and increases the cost of maintenance. So, this was all about the various disadvantages of wind energy. Next, we are going to learn about the non-conventional sources of energy in detail. With growing population and industrial needs, there is a need to look for sources of energy which is environmental friendly, economical, renewable and effective. They include solar energy, energy from sea, that is tidal energy, wave energy, ocean thermal energy and then nuclear energy. Okay, now let's study each of them in detail. First one is the solar energy. The sun is the main source of energy for all living beings on this earth. Even the energy in the fossil fuels has come from the sun. The sun has an endless reservoir of energy which would be available as long as the solar system is in existence. It is renewable and no conventional sources of energy. The examples of device using solar energy are solar cooker and solar panel. A solar cooker is a device which uses the energy of direct sunlight to cook food. Interior of cooker is usually black in color as black color absorbs most of the energy. Plain mirror or concave mirror is fixed at top sides of the cooker. On the other side, a transparent glass is placed. The light reflected from the plain mirror concentrates the solar energy inside the solar cooker, which generates enough heat to cook food. Now, the solar panel. A solar panel are devices that convert solar light into electricity. Solar panels are comprised of several individual solar cells which are themselves made of silicon. The more light that hits the cell, the more electricity it produces. Solar panels are used in satellites, Mars probe, traffic signals, street lights, houses, calculator, toys, TV stations and radio stations in remote locations. There are some advantages of solar panels. Advantages are, it can be used in remote locations where there is no connection of lights, requires little maintenance, renewable sources of energy, no moving parts, etc. And also there are some disadvantages. The disadvantages of solar panels is that it can produce electricity only on sunny days. Special grade silicon is required for making solar cells, and manufacturing is expensive and produces only low energy. These are the various disadvantages of solar panels. Move on to the next topic of this chapter, that is energy from sea. The oceans cover about 70% of the terrestrial area. They contain a lot of energy. A small part of it can be used. Energies which are technically available are the tidal energy, wave energy and ocean thermal energy. All these are renewable and non-conventional sources of energies. The tidal energy is formed due to gravitational attraction of moon and even sun to some extent. The level of water in oceans changes twice in a day. When the level of water is high, tides are high. When the level of water is low, tides are also low. Dams or reservoirs are built near seashores to collect the water which comes during a high tide. Turbines in the barrier generates electricity as the tide floods into the reservoir. Once the tide outside the barrier has receded, water retained can then be released through turbines into the ocean, again generating electricity. For wave energy, the waves are created due to movement of wind on ocean surface. A variety of technologies have been proposed to capture the energy from waves. They can be used in several ways to rotate the rotor of dynamo to generate electricity. Ocean thermal energy is a renewable energy technology that harnesses the solar energy absorbed by the oceans to generate electrical power. Now let's move on to the working of ocean thermal plant. For ocean thermal plant, temperature differences between hot and cold layer should be at least 20 degrees Celsius to vaporize a working fluid which has a low boiling point such as ammonia. The vapor expands and spins a turbine coupled to a generator to produce electricity. The vapor is then cooled by seawater that has been pumped from deeper ocean layer that condenses the working fluid back into a liquid, so it can be reused. This is a continuous electricity generating cycle. Okay friends, now let's discuss the next topic of this lesson, that is nuclear energy. Nuclear power is derived from energy that is released when relatively large atoms like atoms of uranium, thorium are split by shooting neutrons on them. In this process, one atom forms some small atoms, 3 neutrons and heat. The process of splitting an atom is known as nuclear fission. The resulting heat is used to boil water, which drives a steam turbine to generate electricity. Friends, have you ever heard about chain reactions? If we trigger one reaction of nuclear fission, chain reactions starts. In a chain reaction, particles released by the splitting of the atom strikes other uranium atoms and split them. The particles released by this further split other items in a chain process. The advantages are it can produce huge amount of electricity. 1 kilogram coal can light up one bulb for 8 hours and 1 kilogram of uranium can light up one bulb for 3 into 104 years. There are also some disadvantages. The disadvantages include high setup cost. Chance of accidents, that is radiations emitted, can cause huge loss to environment and civilization. The waste products are very harmful and so it needs to be disposed carefully. So this was all about the disadvantages of nuclear energy. Let us now go through the environmental consequences. No source of energy is pollution free. It is good to use sources with less pollution. Some sources of energy like coal, petroleum are non-renewable and causes harm to the environment. Burning fossil fuels causes air pollution. In other cases, though they do not cause harm to the environment, the setup and maintenance cost is very high as in case of maintenance and solar energy. So, there is continuous research that going on to use energy which is environmental friendly, renewable, economical and efficient. That is the end of the chapter. In today's class, we have learned about the different sources of energy. It's a very important and interesting chapter. So, I hope all of you enjoyed this lesson very well. We'll meet you in next class with another interesting chapter for you. Till then, bye-bye. Have a nice day.